What up, Wizards? It's Dev from The Place, and we got some more SpiderMan cards for you, and these you might actually want to pay some attention to. The other day we got a batch of the Welcome Deck SpiderMan cards, and those were kind of ho-hum, I guess. There were a few kind of interesting pieces in there, but today is a whole different web sling and chicken wing because we got some previews out of San Diego Comic-Con, and there are some good cards in this batch, it turns out. At least 4 of these look straight up good, and 2 of them look actually busted, so let's go ahead and get to them. Now, we'll start today's batch with the only uncommon in the bunch, and that is Green Goblin Revenant. We finally get to see a Green Goblin card, which I support, but he's not green at all. It's a little bit weird. This is 5 mana, 3, and then rack those colors, a red and a black, for a 3/3 legendary goblin human villain with flying and death touch. Whenever GG attacks, discard a card, then draw a card for each card you've discarded this turn. Now that is, in some ways, a really cool and thought-provoking even ability. Too bad the card is kind of not great. 5 mana for a 3/3 is already putting it a little bit behind the starting line in terms of stats, and then you have to actually wait an entire turn for it to attack most of the time, unless you can devise haste. But even if you can devise haste, to get real value out of this, you have to have discarded a bunch of cards before you can even attack with it. And with that in mind, even if you wait the full turn, you still have to do that. You still have to find a way to discard like 2 or 3 cards and end up drawing the 4 of your dreams off of this dude. And I'm just not sure it's like ever really going to happen. Might be a cool limited piece, especially if they facilitate discard in the set. And it looks like they might, but beyond that, I just don't think this is doing much of anything. Like even in your Rakdos Commander deck, you could probably find a cool build for it, especially if you're going budget with it. But ultimately, I'm just not sure how many piles it's going to fit into. But again, I kind of like the text box. I just wish the card were better overall, I guess. Well, let's move on to Kraven's Last Hunt here. This is the most recently previewed card of the bunch. This is 4 mana, 3 and a green for a Saga. On Chapter 1, mill 5 cards. When you do, this Saga deals damage equal to the greatest power among creature cards in your graveyard to target creature. On Chapter 2, target creature you control, get +2/+2 till end of turn. On Chapter 3, return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. So a mono green removal spell that'll probably kill something, but it's still 4 mana at sorcery speed and able to pull it off. So not the absolute best removal spell in the world, I would assume, but there could be an enormous guy in your graveyard. This does mill 5 too, and 5 rips from the top is pretty good in your like Reanimator deck, I guess. But the problem is that this is the same spot on the curve as most of your Reanimator spells, like Zombify or whatever. So I'm not sure that it can even really do that much work in Reanimator, and you probably got better removal spells in your Reanimator pile anyway if you're playing Zombify. So there's some issues there too, but just in like mono green, I have problems with it too, because even though it's a pretty decent removal spell, like you probably want to be playing a nasty man on turn 4 or with your 4 mana. So I don't know about that either. Chapter 2 is maybe okay, especially if you're giving the +2/+2 to a trampling guy, but overall it's not that impressive. And then finally, I guess you get like a pretty green. I was going to say it's like, it's more of a black ability really, but like green can also return stuff. So you get a Raise Dead on Chapter 3, which I guess could be okay, especially if you do have a huge guy in there. So, there's some decent stuff about this card, and I think like maybe some green commander decks want to fit it because it's an okay removal spell some of the time, and especially if you're trying to mill yourself anyway, like you're doing some sort of landy thing with Crucible of Worlds maybe, like this could fit in. So I don't absolutely hate this, and I see some spots for it, but again, not super impressed by any of the cards that we've seen today just yet, but we're getting there. So we'll move on to a card I've already seen some differing opinions on, which is true of a lot of the cards that we'll see today, save for the last 2, which everyone knows are just kind of crazy. But the next one is Miles Morales. This is 2 mana, 1 and a green for a 1/2 legendary human citizen hero. When Miles Morales enters, put a +1/+1 counter on each of up to 2 target creatures. You can also pay 6 mana, that's 3 and Naya colors, red, green, white, to transform Miles at sorcery speed. It becomes Ultimate Spider-Man. Let's go. So this is also, you see here, 6 mana. So I've already discussed this a little bit, but the way these cards appear to work in this set, the transform cards, is you can either play them for a lower cost as their sort of alter ego, their normal person version, and then flip them into the superhero version. Or if you draw them later on in the game or you have enough mana, you can just play them out of your hand as their transform version, which I think is very simple, and we should do that more often. Just makes sense, right? But you could just play this for 6 mana if you want to. This is a a 4/3 legendary spider human hero with both first strike and haste. It also has this ability called camouflage. If you pay 2, put a +1/+1 counter on Ultimate Spider-Man and he gains hexproof and becomes colorless until end of turn. Whenever you attack, double the number of each kind of counter on each spider and legendary creature that you control. And remember, when Miles came into play, he put counters on stuff, so that could be cute, especially in your legendary deck, or of course, your spider deck. I'm not going to bring up the spider decks like too often today, but there are multiple cards, including some of the better ones, that work super well with spiders. So, could be cute, especially if you're specifically building a Spider-Man deck with like a bunch of different Spider-Mans in there, which like seems like the set might allow you to be able to do that. But I guess Miles also goes kind of nice in any +1/+1 counter build. He can put the counter on himself, so being a 2-mana 2/3 is fine. He kind of brings 3-4 worth of stats into play, which I'm kind of into on a 2-drop, but you have to have done a little bit of work in the game before you play him. But even if all the work you did was play like a 1-drop, it seems alright. Just like Saz's Chocobo into land drop into Miles, and your Chocobo's already like big enough, and you know what I mean? Like it's getting there. So I don't know, there's some cool things I like about this, I will say that, but 6 mana seems like a good bit, and there's a pretty decent color requirement on actually playing Ultimate Spider-Man, but once you get it, he can kind of protect himself, but he'll cost like 8 mana if you want to have enough mana to protect him when he comes down. He's like so much mana, but you untap with him in play, and then suddenly he's a lot better at protecting himself, and he gets larger every time he does so, which is pretty wild. You don't have to attack with him, it's just an attacks trigger, which is gross too, you know, so alright, you know, it's not each other spider whenever you attack or whatever, like you also get to double his counters, so, you know, you could probably get up to some crazy stuff if you have a couple of turns with ult out, but, you know, Miles is pretty decent on the front face too, just in terms of the value you get for playing it, so altogether I think this is kind of a solid Magic card. Again, we're getting into the solid stuff, I promise you. Like this little commander darling right here. Let's look at Iron Spider Stark Upgrade. You see what they did there? This is 3 mana for a 2/3 legendary artifact creature, which is also a spider hero. That's a lot of types. It has Vigilance, and you can tap it to put a +1/+1 counter on each artifact creature and or vehicle that you control. But you can also pay 2 mana and remove 2 +1/+1 counters from among artifacts you control to draw a card. So a couple of good abilities on this kind of like Steel Overseer variant, but this Steel Overseer can hang out in your command zone. So that's cute. You know, you don't have access to like colors if you do that, which is, you know, you have to get to thinking. Get creative is all, but it could be a great commander. But even just in the 99 of like Artifacts Matter commander decks, or like decks where artifact creatures obviously specifically matter, any number of Urza variants, you know, like this could obviously be a card that just like has to be in the 99 somewhere, or else you're probably not playing right. Just like extra, I guess, like redundancy with the Steel Overseer that's already in that. But I think slapping Vigilance on it is kind of a big deal. Drawing cards is going to be more than welcome, and you can do it multiple times in a turn if you have the mana and counters to do it. So again, I think this is kind of a commander, not necessarily all-star because it's a bit narrow, right? It's relegated to like one kind of deck, but it just kind of is a must play in those decks. In standard, I don't think so, but we'll see if there's a decent like artifact aggro deck with Ginger Brutes or something. That's probably a thing you can do, I guess. So I don't know. I think the card is really cool, and I think it's going to be a fun brew around. Let's move on to a card that I'm not sure if everybody likes it, but I do. This is Dr. Octopus Master Planner. 7 mana. Okay, so just let's get over that. 7 mana, 5. A blue and a black for a 4/8 legendary human scientist villain. Other villains you control get +2/+2. Your maximum hand size is 8. At the beginning of your end step, if you have fewer than 8 cards in hand, draw cards equal to the difference. Okay, so first of all, I'd like to get like a community barometer on this card, but no one's talking about how much they like the card or what the card does or whatever. They're just talking about like, it doesn't cost 8 mana. Like literally everything I've seen about this card on like Reddit and Twitter or whatever is just people being like, why no cost 8? It's just like, come on, man, can we talk about Magic? Can we just, what does the text box say? And I think the text box is really, really strong, actually, man. Like, as a reanimator target, we probably have like better stuff, you know, like Valgabots and standard or whatever, but I think this could like be in the mix in your reanimator deck, you know, like if you have, what's his name, Arden, you know, you could put in Doc Ock as like a 5/5 haste, like whatever abilities Arden gives the guy. And suddenly you can get in with Doc Ock the same turn he comes into play. And you probably draw like 4 cards EOT, like it has to be not interacted with, but he's got a really high toughness. I guess that's good. He's immune to sorcery speed removal, at least if you want to draw the cards off of him. So, it's kind of like an Atraxa or something. Like if you look sideways, you bend your neck as hard as you possibly can to the side, and like maybe it looks like an Atraxa a little bit. This could possibly draw you literally 8 cards. Like a Griselbrand or something. Like, can we not go? Like, do we have to remain stationary? Can we go a little bit? I think it's kind of fine. As far as standard goes, I think maybe, again, like a one-of in certain Reanimator decks, or maybe in the sideboard, or in a Reanimator deck that's going to dump its hand, which is like most Reanimator decks, right? You're looking to discard cards anyway. So if you discard down to like 2 cards before you rip the Reanimator spell out, then like, you're drawing a bunch, dude. Like, you're getting a fresh hand. I just don't think that, like, you can understate that. The few people I have seen give their opinion on this have mostly been like, either I love it and it goes in all my commander decks, or I hate it, it's the worst card I've ever seen. It's like really extremes on this. And honestly, I'm kind of like a 6 on this. You know what I mean? Like I'm a little past the middle, because like I think that drawing even 3 or 4 cards a turn it comes into play could be phenomenal, and like maybe the villain text on it's like a double anthem for villains, like maybe that's okay, I guess, but I'm mostly just interested in drawing 5. I think that could be ridiculous, especially on a pretty stout body. I could be into that. You could talk me into this, but let's move on. We have to eventually. I will just hem and haw about this all day, like, but it draws like, I don't know, like 6, you get my point by now. It draws a lot of cards. That's good. But Gwen Stacy is up next. This is 2 mana, 1 and a red for a 2/1 legendary human performer hero. Interesting. When Gwen Stacy enters, exile the top card of your library. You may play that card for as long as you control this creature. You can also pay 5 mana, 2 and Jeskai this time, so 2 blue, white, red. Transform Gwen as a sorcery. She becomes Ghost Spider. She looks awesome. 5 mana, 2, a blue, a red, and a white. So again, you just play this out of your hand instead of transforming it if you want to do that. But if you play the 2 mana 2/1, you kind of just draw a card, which is good. It's not bad. But anyway, if you play Ghost Spider, you get a 4/4 legendary spider human hero with flying and vigilance and haste. So hey, you get a Sarah Angel with haste. Costs the same mana as far as mana value goes. But whenever you play a land from exile or cast a spell from exile, put a +1/+1 counter on Ghost Spider. All right. Remove 2 counters from Ghost Spider to exile the top card of your library. You may play that card this turn. So pretty easy in these colors to make this get pretty large. And like, I guess if you played Gwen Stacy and you just kept the card over there the entire game, and then you pay 5 mana and transform it clean, and now you play the card out of exile, she gets a counter. That seems like a lot of work. It seems like it's probably not going to happen. Gwen has to survive a whole bunch of turns. She has to survive the transform animation. You have to not really need the card that's in exile for like 3 full turns. Like, I just put that out of your mind. I don't think it's going to happen too often. But in any case, this thing works like really nicely with any sort of red card draw, especially, like anything that exiles cards from the top of your library and then you get to cast them whenever. That's great with this. But also, like warp and adventures and plots and all kinds of stuff. And there's plenty of things in these colors to do that. So really, really neat, actually. I think this could get big like relatively quickly, or if not big, then like a 6/6 relatively fast. Then you got like a flying vigilance haste, which is kind of tough to deal with. Even if you just pay this, like pay 5 mana for this, like swinging 4 to the face to turn you play it is like, all right. There's nothing wrong with that. I guess you don't necessarily have to like pay mana to use its abilities, so that's pretty good too, especially if you can engineer a way of getting counters on it like quickly, So I like card draw. I like big flying haste guys. It's not like a dragon or anything, but it's kind of wearing a dragon's pants. So I do there's a few things I like about this. It might be a little bit At the end of the day, this is where standard is. It might be a little too on either mode, but you put both modes potentially together and it gets okay. Because again, 2 mana 2/1 that draws your card. Yeah, okay. I've played the little 2 mana dog a bunch of times that draws a card in white. I've played Elvish Visionary a bunch of times, and although this isn't necessarily that, in some ways it's a lot better. It's got higher toughness. It protects the card from discard and stuff. So again, like altogether, I think it's a pretty solid Magic card. But let's move on to the, I think, more objectively good cards in the batch. And I guess ironically, that means we have to talk about one of the more divisive cards of the last 48 hours. It's Multiversal Passage. This is a land, and it enters, you end up choosing a basic land type. Then you may pay 2 life. If you don't pay the 2 life, this thing's going to enter tapped, and it is the chosen type. So, chose a forest? It's just a forest now. And so on and so forth. I just think this is straight up good. I'll go ahead and let you know. I'll spoil that because I think a lot of people have been kind of arguing over this for the last 2 days, and I think it just is good. Why all the argument? It's a standard card. It's not meant, I think, for Commander. And I don't even think it's meant for like Pioneer, especially when you get to Modern. Like, no, like fetches and shocks in that format. And we are going to have 5 shocks in the upcoming Standard, but for the most part, the mana gets way worse. Like, we lose all of the pain lands, we lose half of the fast lands, and I think that's where this comes in for a lot of decks, especially like 2 and 3 color aggro decks. Like most 3 color aggro decks might want to play this alongside Starting Town. It might be an upgrade on Thran Portal, which is rotating out anyway. So, maybe you play it in those builds. But I think, again, certain 2 color combinations are going to just really, really want this. Things like Selesnya and Rakdos, any 2 or even 3 color combination that lose any number of their fast lands, or especially their pain lands, or they don't pick up a shock, or whatever it is, or all 3, So that's going to really impact a lot of decks. And again, I think that this really helps fill that void. Not only that, but it's really good in 2 color decks that have, 1 drops of both colors. Like sometimes you really need green for that Llanowar Elves, but you also need black for your black 1 drop, or white for your white 1 drop. And I think that could definitely be more of a thing in the upcoming format too. This helps out Selesnya in a lot of ways, not only because they might want to play Llanowar Elves on 1, but they might also want to play like Lightstall Inquisitor on 1 or something like that. But they also want to play Bright Glass Gearhulk in Selesnya, and that just picked up a bunch of incredible 1-drops it can search up from Edge of Eternities. But the problem is the mana's terrible. So again, that's why we have cards like this, right? Because Bright Glass is kind of tough to cast, so this can be whatever, basic land you need to cast that on turn 4. That's another thing. Let me go back to aggro for a second. I think that aggro decks really like a card like this because, we have Starting Town, but Starting Town is going to come into play tapped on turn 4 and beyond. And this will never come into play tapped if you don't want it to, or if you have the life or whatever. And, some aggro decks really need that capability on turn 4. So just kind of wonderful a little bit. I think this very elegantly fills a slot that we need to fill in Standard. And even after we get the other half of the shock lands, who knows when that's going to be, I think there's still a spot for these because Verges are in the format and all that. So again, I think a pretty nice solution to a problem, bridging the gap, at least until we get the next shock lands, but until we get some even better duels. So again, I think it's a pretty phenomenal card for Standard specifically, and a good design. But let's move on from the land, because these can sometimes be boring, to a card that is just rad. This is AntiVenom, Horrifying Healer. So 5 white mana for a 5/5 legendary symbiote hero. When AntiVenom enters, if he was cast, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Gnarly. If damage would be dealt to AntiVenom, prevent that damage and put that many +1/+1 counters on him. Okay, man. That's also a good ability. What is it about, 5 pips of one single color that makes you, really not want to deal damage to a creature for whatever reason? It's like Phyrexian Vindicator, Phyrexian Obliterator, now this. It just turns out if you see this many pips, then, don't touch that guy. Which is kind of a weird, quirk of design, but this dude has an awesome cast trigger, man. And, I guess it kind of sucks that it's cast trigger, whatever. You can't reanimate him and he reanimates something else. Can't blink him to reanimate. And, sure, that would be better, but that doesn't mean that the guy is bad either, These mono white decks, I don't even know if they play it. To be honest, I don't know. Most of the mono white decks in Standard right now play, 4 Fountain Port, and sometimes they play even more colorless lands and stuff. Hell, in the upcoming environment, they might be incentivized to play even more, colorless lands or whatever, because now they don't have to worry about lay down arms. That card rotates out. They had to play some number of planes in their deck to get away with playing lay down arms, but now that card rotates, they don't have to worry about it anymore. They just go hog wild with the non-planes cards in their decks, So I'm just not sure that this slots directly into those builds, especially considering Those builds don't really like have a bunch of creatures to reanimate. They don't discard creatures either. So, I'm not really sure what you do with this in standard, like how you build the deck, how you discard cards, especially without like Guardian of New Benalia that also rotates out. That would have been a great way to discard cards, but white just doesn't have a million ways to do it. And you kind of have to be mono white. It's not absolutely necessary. We saw those Phyrexian Obliterator decks that play Bushwhack in these last couple of years. So, it can be done, but it's kind of tough. We just discussed how terrible the mana bases are. So, you try it if you want to, man. I think this is a really fun, brew around Commander, because there's a lot of ways in Commander to discard cards in white or with artifacts or whatever. And just start reanimating stuff and pop them back to your hand somehow, reanimate stuff. So, I just think he's actually really, really slick. You don't see a whole lot of mono white reanimator creatures, so really cool design there, fun to brew around, even in standard, mostly in Commander, but again, even in standard, I think this will be a neat card to try to make work, so altogether, I think it's a really, really cool design and one that might actually do some stuff if it's got the right shell. But from one card that could be busted in the right deck to another, here's Symbiote SpiderMan. This one's wild, 3 mana, 2, and then a Dimir hybrid, so either blue or black. For a 2/4 legendary symbiote spider hero. Whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, look at that many cards from the top of your library. Put one of them into your hand, and the rest go in your graveyard. Find New Host is his ability. You can pay 3 mana, 2, and then another blue-black hybrid, to exile this card from your graveyard. Put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. It gains this card's other abilities. Activate only as a sorcery, so I think that's pretty good. We've seen a few cards from the Welcome decks in this set that kind of have this ability, sort of a retread of Renew from a few sets ago, where you just exile a guy from your yard and it gives its abilities to something else. This is just kind of that without it being called Renew, so kind of neat way to recycle an ability that we literally just had in standard. We still have it in standard. It just came out. But either way, I think this is really, really neat, man. Whether or not it's actually good, I don't know. But, we've got Carsey Revenant in standard, and that has proven to be a pretty decent card in a few different decks. That's just exiles from your yard to give its abilities to stuff. And this kind of does the same thing. You don't get a bunch of keywords from it or anything, but you do get the ability to potentially look at, 3-4 cards or something, depending on what you're stapling the ability to, and get the best every time you deal combat damage, which is a really good trigger. The rest go in your yard, which could also be a really good trigger. I guess it could be dangerous. Keeps you from putting this on like a 10-10, but I'd still do it. I'm reckless, but still, if you just look at the top, in his case, 2, when he gets in, well, and suddenly, it's still good. You still get a sleight of hand kind of thing, one card goes away, other card goes in your hand, and that's not bad. But the moment a 4 power creature or 5 power creature gets in, you actually get some hefty bonus off this bad boy. Getting the best out of the top 4 or 5 is insane. So this could be really good if you're putting on unblockable creatures or creatures with any form of evasion, or just at a point in the game where your opponent's out of removal and you're getting in. Even if you're only getting in for 3 damage, might as well do this. It's a free card. You get to cast Anticipate when you get him for combat damage. That's gross. So I guess you're really casting strategic planning in that situation. But anyway, it's a little semantic, but still, all that notwithstanding, I think this could be okay. It's a 3 mana 3/4, which, or 2/4, which is probably not altogether better than Preacher of the Schism or something like that. But I don't know, maybe a one of in certain decks. I could see it. But I promised you some busted cards way back when at the beginning of the video, so let's get to those. Let's take a look at Spectacular Spider-Man. 2 mana, 1 and a white for a 3/2 legendary spider-human hero with flash. You can pay 1. Spectacular Spider-Man gains fly until end of turn. Do you see? Do you see the flavor? You can also pay 1 and sacrifice Spectacular Spider-Man to have creatures you control gain hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. So a kind of selfless spirit variant that I really like, man. It has freaking flash. Do you understand? So 3 mana to protect the entire squad. At instant speed, or you can just play him on turn 2 and you have a 3/2 for 2 mana in white with flash. You can play it during your opponent's combat step if they're trying to get in with a 1 something, just blow that away. No, sir. And unlike a lot of other flash creatures, it actually has 2 toughness. A lot of 2 mana flash creatures and 1 mana flash creatures just have the 1. Fairy Mastermind and beyond. So being able to actually block one power guys that are coming in is a big deal, you know? So kind of like that. You can flash it in, block a Deep Cavern Bat if they make the mistake of attacking with it, and that's kind of nice. So altogether, just that is really cool. A 2-mana 3/2 flash is well above rate, so or below rate? Actually, I never know which one is correct. But anyway, this is a very good rate, I should say, just because it's a 2-mana 2 or 3/2. With a freaking, God, with flash, I just can't get over that. That is a very good stat line for the rate you're paying. But again, man, being able to sacrifice him whenever you have an extra open mana is going to throw the opponent way off their game plan. And all you got to do is come down on one creature, protect the rest of the team. So nasty. And again, if all he's doing is hanging out in your hand or something, you draw him a little bit later, then suddenly he's protection from the sweep. So insane, man. He's also protection from, like, the blocks, or if you mess up something when you swing in, or your opponent has a card you didn't think they had or something, and they try to blow you out during combat. Spidey to the rescue. Everybody gets one. So I think this is actually like an unbelievably good card, both in Standard and Commander. For what it's worth, I think this could see plenty of play in Standard. It's a halfway decent threat for certain decks, like, again, like even control decks might play this if they play other threats, and a lot of them elect to do that. In a deck with Enduring Curiosity, you've got a bunch of like real flash threats that'll draw you cards now when they hit because of Curiosity. So all I'm saying is that if they're creature-based like blue-white decks or whatever, this could easily be a part of them. Just a wonderful Magic card that's obviously pushed to the moon. So this is just one of two. There's yet another card that I think will have like maybe even eternal format relevance today, and certainly Commander relevance. That's unquestionable. Let's look at SpiderPunk here. 2 mana, 1 and a red for a 2/1 legendary spider human hero with Riot. Hey, Riot. Other spiders you control have Riot. Spells and abilities can't be countered, and damage can't be prevented. So it's a Rhythm of the Wild, but only for spiders. Only your spiders can get that wild rhythm in them, and that's interesting. This is where like building a SpiderMan deck kind of comes in back into the conversation. You know what I mean? There's a bunch of Spider-Men that work kind of well with each other, or they help spiders out in some way or another. So like they could all play together fairly well. But this is also like spider support and Commander. I guess this won't go in like Shelob or Ishkana because color requirements, but still, bear with me. I guess it's spider support there if you can make it work. And soon it's going to be like Changeling support in Standard. Like all your Changelings have Riot. That's pretty cool. Again, on like a 2-drop, this is nasty. It could be a 2 mana 2 power haste, which is typically okay, or it can just be a 2 mana 3/2. And I was just talking about how decent of a stat line that can be. If you untap with it in play, then like just play any other Spider-Man or Spider in the game of Magic, and you can have the same decision to make with that, and that is really good value. But obviously the important parts of the card are the last 2 lines of text. Like damage can't be prevented is fine some of the time, but spells and abilities can't be countered is wild. That's so good. That's rad, man. Like, especially again in a game of Commander, I think that this is pretty relevant. I think a lot of, if not all of, the cards with an ability like this have been green. You can correct me if I'm wrong in the comment section, because I could easily be wrong, but I'm scanning my mental Rolodex and I just can't come up with too many cards that, like Vexing Shusher or whatever, like all these cards are green. Destiny Spinner and stuff, like these are green cards. Scragnoth, that's green, you know what I mean? So I'm pretty sure that like if you're mono red or just red white or something, like this is one of your only options for being able to like just combo off or whatever. It's also spells and abilities. Like abilities can't be countered is a little narrow. It's an edge case, but it's an edge case that matters like so hard when it does matter. And because of that, I actually think this could be like eternal playable. Like just 2 mana for this ability on a pretty aggressive 2-drop is the kind of card that might line up in like Vintage really well. I mean, we'll have to wait and see about that. But again, I think this could also be Standard playable just because of the stat line, get you attacking in your mono red deck really early, and now you don't have to worry until they remove this. You don't have to worry about them mucking around on your turn and trying to counter your stuff or whatever. So just incredible. In like a red-white deck, you land this and Voice of Victory, and now you're just good to go. You know what I mean? Nothing can ever be countered. They can't play stuff on your turn. It's just, you get to play Magic free like it's, like it's Pokemon. You just get to do whatever you want on your turn and they can't really do anything about it. So I don't know. That could be your kind of magic is all I'm saying. Just really powerful magic card. And I think like easily head and shoulders the best of the bunch. And that's in a bunch that has Spectacular Spider-Man, which I also think is a crazy magic card. But SpiderPunk is kind of on another level. It's one of those cards that I don't know if it'll do all the stuff in Standard, but the further back you go, I think the better it gets. And in Commander, I think it's relative. I think it's relevant. That's the word I'm looking for. That this might be like one of the only ways you can get this outside of green. So card is going to be quite the wayfarer. It's going to go everywhere. Now, that's Itsky Lewinsky for the Spider-Man previews for today, and I think that's going to be the last batch we see for at least a few weeks here. I'm pretty sure that preview season doesn't start in earnest for some time because the set doesn't come out until, what is it, September or something? So, you know, in the meantime, the between time, you can always join us for a bunch of Edge of Eternity's videos. Remember, that set's not even technically out yet. What are we doing as far as like spoiler stuff goes? When I did the Welcome Decks video, the entire comment section was just about Endless Spoiler Season. So just take that into account, Watsy. If anyone ever sees this clip, you should probably note that the tide is turning, and now every single comment on every video I do is like, what's up with the fact that we never actually get to play Magic and it's just always new cards coming out? I think you're maybe overexposing the game just slightly. Just a tip. Don't kill the messenger. Literally don't do it. Don't send the Pinkertons. But in any case, y'all, altogether, what we have seen from the set looks okay to me. But, you know, if you don't like Spider-Man, here's a high fiver, man. You don't like J. Jonah Jameson, I don't blame you, son. You know, like Spider-Man's not everyone's cup of tea, but good magic cards are certainly my cup of tea. So the more SpiderPunks and Spectacular Spider-Mans and Multiversal Passages that we see in a set like this, the happier I am. And when it comes to stuff like Multiversal Passage, that could easily get reprinted at some point or another, and they don't even have to change it for the not Spider-Man Arena set they're going to have to release. So more cards like that, please, in the Spider-Man set. I'll be happy with those. But in any case, y'all, just let me know how you felt about everything, any interactions I missed or any times I goofed up. I'm sure you'll let me know. But anyway, hit me up in the comments section with all the stuff, and then do the YouTube things on your way out. You can hit the like button. It's the one shaped like a thumb. Sub to the sandwich. I know no one subscribes to YouTubers anymore. Just this one time. Lift your finger a few inches. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't done it yet. I need them subs. Yum, yum, yum. But you can also check out the Patreon. I know that's an even harder sell, but it's only $1 a month. And you can vote on what content we do for Edge of Eternity Standard, and I guess Spider-Man Standard when we get there. But anyway, y'all, I'm out for now. I'm Deb from The Place. Thanks for watching, Wizards. Spread love and be kind.